We'll be beginning now. Nandi, you can start recording. Just a second. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is your second CP class, I believe. I'm very sorry since we had a couple of days without any classes because I was a bit busy. Uh, anyways, we covered some Python basics in the last class, right? And we'll be going over a bit of Python in this class as well. And from the next class, we'll be going into the CP bit, like specifically competitive programming, nothing related to Python. Okay, so before I begin, a couple of things. Firstly, acha, wait, let me share my screen. Acha, can you see my screen? Is my screen visible? I think it should be visible. Okay, so first of all, if you haven't already, I highly suggest downloading and installing Python. If you haven't already, uh, I think I sent a video link for those of you who are having problems with installing Python. If you haven't, I don't know why Codeforce isn't. Anyways, if you haven't installed VS Code, you should install VS Code as well. Should make an account on Codeforces. Unfortunately, Codeforces is down right now, I think. Also, you should also make an account on codingladders.com, and that's all you need as of now. Okay. Oh, another thing. The next few classes will have. Huh? Wait. Uh, it might be. I don't know why it's not working for me. Anyways, so if you haven't made a Codeforces account, you should do it at the earliest. You can also make CodeChef and LeetCode accounts as well. Okay, another thing for the next few classes we'll be having, guys, if I get a bit late in sending the meeting link, please don't freak out, okay? I'll send it within 5 to 10 minutes after the time I specified. Just don't freak out like a lot of you did today. Anyways, today we'll be looking at uh, ordered data types in Python specifically. So I believe we went over the basic data types, all of them, in the last class. Today we'll be looking at the ordered data types, which are strings, lists, sets, tuples, etc. Because nothing else is coming to my mind right now. Okay, what are ordered data types? Ordered data types are, okay, say you have a number. Okay, let's say you have an integer. This this is just the data itself. Okay, it doesn't have any children data or any elements, so to speak. So when Python looks at an integer, it just sees the value, okay, just the magnitude. So it sees that x has the value 123. It doesn't see 123 as, okay, there's 3 in the first ones place and 2 in the tens place and 1 in the hundreds place. It doesn't deal with the data 123 like that. It just sees 123. However, if I do, let's say x equal to string 123. Now, the way Python deals with this is it doesn't see 123 as an entire string, right? It does see 123 as an entire string, but it is broken up into like single characters. Okay, so there's three. No, there's one in the index. I'll get over what index is later. So there's one in the zeroth index, there's two in the first index, there's three in the second index, and so on. So what this means is X has children elements. Okay, so there's one, there's two, and three. Unlike how the 123 is dealt as an integer, it doesn't have any children elements. Similarly, you have lists uh, like this. So 1, 2, and 3, these strings, they are treated as children elements of this X, okay, this list. Just a second. Uh, so now what are ordered and unordered data types, right? Say you have something called a dictionary. Okay, this is how a dictionary looks like in Python. Say you have a dictionary like this, and then say you have a list like this. If you don't know what a dictionary is, you don't need to worry about that, because primarily you won't be needing dictionary as much as you will be needing lists or strings. Okay, I will be showing you what a dictionary is once we do see practical examples of when we need to use dictionaries. But how dictionary works basically is there are key value pairs. So this is a key and this is a value. I won't be getting into any more details about dictionaries. But the thing about dictionaries is each of these pairs, okay, these are children element inside the dictionary. However, these do not have any specific position. So let's say this key value pair, say one is the key and then string one is the value. This is not specifically in the first position in the dictionary. Okay, it's just there in the dictionary. Similarly, two as the key and then string two as the value. This pair, this isn't in the second position in the dictionary. This is just there in the dictionary. So you can't just ask Python to look up the second element of the dictionary, because there's no second element. There's just some stuff inside of the dictionary. However, let's say you have a list. Okay, now in list there aren't any key value pairs. There's just single elements, right? One and two. So now in the list, one takes up the first position in the list, and similarly two takes up the second position. So you can do something like int x of, let's say, 0. This is called indexing. Okay, anything which is an ordered data structure, an ordered data type in Python, you can use third brackets like this. Okay, so let's say you have x as a list. You can also have x as a string. You can put the third brackets after x, and then you can specify a position inside of it. So how positions work in Python is this is called index, by the way. Uh, how these work in Python is the first child element of this data type will be given the 0th position. So this is why I'm using 0. If I run this will print 1, because in the 0th position, on the first position, there's 1. Similarly, if I do 1, now say 1 is the first position, so 1 is the second position. So if I run this now, it will print 2, because in the first position, or rather the second position, there's 2, right? This is how you access like children items inside of a ordered data type. You can also have a string that says 1 and 2. If I run this will print 2. Why does it print 2? That's because in the first position, that is the second position, uh, there's 2 inside of the string. Now you have a lot of ordered data types in Python. You have strings, you have lists, you have sets and tuples, right? Primarily, I want you to be concerned with only strings and lists. Okay, there are use cases for sets and tuples. Acha, let me give you an example of how a tuple is. This is a tuple and this is a set. These are also ordered data types. So one has the 0th position in this, and two has the first position, and so on. Similarly, one has a 0th position, and so on in Y. The first one is a tuple. This is a tuple. This is a set. But I want you to be concerned with only strings and lists for now. Okay, they're the most important ones. You'll be using them the most. Now, let's say you have a string, right? Acha, one more thing. Any anytime you're working with Python, right? You need to be very aware of the data type of each variable in Python. So let me show you why I am saying this with an example. Let's say you have a string 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, if you do print type of string, now type is a function which takes in any data type and it returns its type. Okay. So let's say you have X as a string with the quotations. So the type function will return its type, which is a string. So if I run this, it will print class str. So we don't need to worry about what classes and objects are as of now, but this is a string, right? So that's why it prints str. Now, if I do x equal to list of x, the list function, acha, there are a lot of functions like this. Okay, there are functions like str, int, list, and so on. So what these functions do is they take in one of the data types and they convert it to another. Okay, they convert it to a string or an integer and so on. So what this does is it takes in the string which you pass on as x, then it converts it to a list. So the list function takes in the string, it converts it to a list and returns it, and it is stored in x. Right. Now if I print type of x, this is a list, right? Now, why did I bring up the topic of the types of the variables and why you need to be aware of the types of the variables? Let's say I have a string 3. Okay. Let's say I have a string 123 and its type. Obviously, it will print class str, stands for string. Now, if I do x is list of x. Now, if I print x just like that, see what it does is x is a string, which is an ordered data type. List is also an ordered data type. So how it deals with this is takes every element inside of this string and then it places it into its respective position inside of a list. So one is in the zeroth position, right? So one gets placed in the zeroth position of the list. Similarly, 2 is in the first position. So 2 gets placed in the first position in the list. 3 is in the second position. 3 gets placed in the second position in the list. And this is how Python works. So these aren't converted to integers or anything. These remain as strings. Okay, these individual elements. Now this is a list, right? If I do print type of x, it will print. Acha, oh, I missed a bracket. This is a list, right? It printed str for the first time I printed the type of x while it was a string. Then I changed it to a list, and now it's a list. Now, if I do x equal to strx again, I print x, you'll notice that it doesn't get converted back into a string like this. Okay, it remains sort of like a list. However, this is not actually a list. See, the function is not for nothing. Okay, the function actually did something. It just didn't convert it back into a string like we had before. So this the wait just a second. Let me show you. This looks like a list while you print it, but this is actually a string. Okay, but this doesn't get converted to a string like this. So you need to be very careful about what kind of data types you're working, especially if you're switching back and forth between strings and lists. Now, why will you be switching back and forth between strings and lists? So firstly, let's look at strings. Okay, Python has a lot of inbuilt functions for strings. Okay, let me write down a couple of them. You have upper, you have lower, you have split. These ones are some of the common ones. Okay, all of these have their own functionality, and this is one of the plus points of using Python. You don't have this kind of stuff in other programming languages, and these make your life very easy if you're doing competitive programming or any other sort of programming. So acha, what does upper, lower, and split do? It's very simple actually. You do x equal to x dot upper x, I passed in all of the lowercase characters. If I run this, they'll be converted into uppercase characters. So upper is a function defined for a string. Okay. Acha, one more thing before I move on. For those of you who aren't well acquainted with Python, you'll be using function. Let's say you have L equal to len of x. Okay. Now, what's the difference between len of x and x dot upper? Len, the function len, it's defined in Python. Okay. It's a default function in Python. So it isn't defined in anything inside of Python. It's directly defined in Python. So what it does, so you can just access it directly. Okay, you don't have to write something dot len. You can just write len and you can pass in something and it will do something. It will return the length of the string in this case. However, the function upper, this is not directly defined within Python. Okay, this is a function that is defined within a string. So that's why you have to do x dot upper. X is a string in this case. If you just do x equal to 1, 2, 3, and then you call x dot upper, this just won't work. Okay, this will throw an error. This upper function, this lower function as well, and split as well, these are defined within the strings. So what it does is it goes into its parent string, it looks at all of the lowercase characters, it changes all of them to uppercase characters like we see over here, and then it returns all of that and it gets stored in x. Okay, if I do abc, it'll still print abc because it converts only the lowercase characters to the uppercase ones. Similarly, if I do x dot lower, it will convert the uppercase characters into lowercase characters. And then you have the split function. Now, what the split functions? Let me give you a very good example. Let's say you have 1, 2, 3, hello world. If you do print x dot split, acha, let me show you with a different example. You have, let's say, 1, 2, 3 dot hello dot world. Now, split, just like upper and lower, is defined within the string. So you need to do x dot split, okay, or any other variable name which has a string inside of it, and then dot split. Now within the function, you need to pass in a separator character. So let's say dot in our case. Now what this will do is this will return a list, and the list will contain all of the elements which are separated by the dot. So let me show you. If you do this, how it works is it goes from the beginning of the string to the end of the string, and every time it hits a separator character which you passed in, it takes all of that which it had before the separator character and it puts it into a list. Okay, and then after it's done with traversing through the entirety of the string, it returns the list it has, and you get this. Okay, all of the characters separated by the dots. Similarly, you can do space, and then you can run this, return 1, 2, 3 hello world, because these are separated by spaces. Split also has the space character as the default value for the separator. So if you don't pass in anything, it will still recognize space as the separator character. So it will split in all of the positions it has a space in. Okay. So these are the basic string functions. You'll be using these ones mostly. Now, one more thing about ordered data types is you have something called indexing and slicing. So let's say you have x equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you do print x of 0, I showed you this just a while back, it prints 1, which is in the 0th position, right? You can also do, let's say, x equal to list of x, which converts it into a list. And just so you know what the list looks like. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, and it prints 1, which is in the 0th position, right? If you give it a value like 90, which just doesn't exist, like there's no 90th character, it will give you an error. Now, similarly, you have something called slicing for ordered data types. Let's say you have the same string. Now, what you can do is use the same third brackets that you used, except with colons inside of them. Now, what you have on the left side of the column, it's the beginning position or the starting position. So let's give 0 for an example. And what you have on the right side of the column is the ending character. Let's give 4 for an example. And it prints 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what just happened here? Firstly, it'll print everything from the 0th position to the 4th position, excluding the character that's in the 4th position, right? So what do you have in the 0th position? You have 1, right? So it begins with 1. What do you have in the 4th position? See, 4 is in the 3rd position because 0, 1, 2, 3. 5 is in the 4th position, right? And it excludes whatever is in the 4th position. So it doesn't print 5. It prints only till 5 without the 5 itself. If I did 5, it would print till the 5th position, which is 6, excluding the 5th position. So it would print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I do say 2 colon 5, it will print from the 2nd position to the 5th position, excluding the 5th position. So we have 3 in the 2nd position, right? We have 6 in the 5th position. So clearly it will print 3, 4, 5, right? You can also give another colon. This is not this is not mandatory to give another colon, but you can if you need to. This is the step value, okay? What you write beyond this colon, this is the step value. Let's take a bigger string for an example, and let's do 0 to 8. So it's supposed to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? No, it's supposed to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if you put in a step value, let's say 2. Now, let me run it first, then you'll understand. Now, what it's doing is, when we didn't have the 2, it was going one by one, right? Now it will go to every second character. So it gets 1 first because it's in the 0th position. Then the second character from 1 is 3. It's not 2. 2 is the first character. It goes to the second character from 1. So you get 3. Then it goes to the second character again, which is not 4, it's 5. So you get 5. And goes to the second character again. Now it's supposed to print till 8, but you don't have a second character after 7. So it prints till 7 because you can't really print 9. It only goes till 8 because we specified the ending value as 8.
Excuse me.
Hello? Are you
Uh,
saying something?
yes. Can we do something that prints the values from the first position to third position and then fifth position to eighth position?
Okay. If you have something like that, say first position to third position and then fifth to eighth, uh, you'll have to use this multiple times. Okay, you need to slice this multiple times. So from the first position to the third position, you said, so 0 to 3. And then you need to print, say, from the fifth position to the eighth position, right? You need to do it like this. You need to get the first to the third position first, then you need to get the fifth to the eighth position. You can't do it in one slicing operation. You need to do it multiple times. Okay, we did the step value. Another thing which you can do with slicing is you can go from you can go in the reverse direction, right? So you can do, say you have 10 characters, right? So you can go from 9, let's say 0, then you can give -1 as the step value. uh, and it will print. Acha, we did -1 over here, then it print. Okay, never mind this. Uh, anyways, so you can go in the reverse direction with a negative step value. Okay, and I don't really remember how you get the first character. Anyways, that doesn't matter. Another thing which you can do is you can just avoid any values, right? So if you just no values inside of this, it'll print the entire thing. Okay, it'll take the most extreme values it can get, and it'll print that. You can also go from, say, the let's say the second position till the very end by just not having any value in the ending position. Okay, so let's say you're working with a string and you need to get everything from the second position till the very end, and you don't know how long the string is. You can just do this. Another thing you can do is you can do negative indexing. This is not the same as the step value, right? You're using the position, you're passing -1 into the positional value. So what -1 does is it counts from behind. So okay, this is in the -0th position because the -0th position would be the same as the 0th position. -0 and 0 are the same. So if you're going from behind, it starts with -1. So this is the -1th character, and this is the -2th character, and so on. You can do like this, and it'll print till 9, excluding the last character. So -1 is the 0. 0 is in the -1th position. So it excludes that and goes from the second position till before that. Okay. Another thing which you should have in the back of your mind is how to reverse a string. See, when you're working with slicing, okay, if you're slicing lists or strings, you can always spend some time thinking about how much you need to slice and whatnot. But something like reversing a string, that should just quickly come out of your mind if you need to use something like that. So if you do just colon colon -1, firstly the step value is -1, so obviously it will go in the reverse direction. And since you have no starting and ending values, so it will take the most extreme values it can get. It will just go from end to end, right? So if I run this, it'll just print the string in reverse. Okay. Okay. Now, why do you need ordered data types? Why are they more important? Firstly, you won't be using unordered data types like dictionaries quite a lot. And secondly, ordered data types like strings and lists, they make your
Hey
life very
Saptarshi,
easy.
Abhinav is
So,
asking you to repeat the last point.
which one, Abhinav? Abhinav, just can you just tell me which part you want me to repeat?
About the 2:2, 2:2.
Huh? I don't get what you mean. Abhinav, can you just repeat what you just said?
About the last program.
Like reversing the string.
Yes.
Okay. Say you have a string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you'll be using reversing quite a lot. Okay, you'll need to reverse strings quite a lot, and so you wouldn't need to think about it if you just remembered how to reverse a string specifically. So if you do colon colon -1, what this does is, firstly, we aren't specifying any starting and ending positions. So it will just take the maximum values it can get. Okay. So from beginning to end, or in our case, end to beginning, since we are specifying a negative step value. So -1 says that, like it tells Python that you need to go from behind to the front, right? So one step behind every time it checks for a character. And since we didn't specify any starting and ending values, so it will just go from the very last position to the very first position. Okay, just completely memorize how to reverse a string. So every time you need to reverse a string, you can just quickly type out colon colon -1. Okay, and it will just reverse the string. So if I run this, it will do 7654321. Okay, now let's look at an example of why you would need to learn about ordered data types. So let's say you've been given a problem. Okay, let's say the problem is you need to take an integer from the user. Okay, for those of you who are still confused about this, I'm taking an input from the user. Now ideally I'll be passing in an integer, since I'm doing this specifically for this program. If I pass in the integer, the input function will take the integer from the user. It will return it as a string, and then the int function will convert that into an integer data type. So let's say you've been given a problem where you need to take an integer from a user, and then you need to check whether the integer is palindrome or not. Okay, whether it's a palindrome or not. So what's a palindrome? It's say 1 2 3 2 1. Okay, if you go from the front, it reads 1 2 3 2 1. If you reverse it, it also reads 1 2 3 2 1. It's the same as it is from the front as it is from as well as back. So this is what a palindrome is. So let's say you need to check if a number is a palindrome or not. Now, traditionally, how you'll be taught, let's say the people who are studying in 11 and 12, you'll be taught to use float division and modulo operator. Okay, and you'll be taught to check the digits one by one. Okay, you'll be taught to use a for loop, and you will need to check the digits one by one, and then you'll need to check whether it's a palindrome or not. But obviously, that's not a smart way to do so. Okay, based on what I just taught all of you, what I showed up till now, can any of you just take a guess at what would be a smarter way to check if a number is a palindrome or not? You can just raise your hands.
Sir, can I guess, sir?
Nah, Son Nandi, you cannot. Let the others try. Okay, Shubhayan, you can go with your answer.
Yes, sir. We first use the colon then -1 so that we can reverse the value, and then we can check if the value is same as the original string.
Okay, what Shubhayan said was almost completely right, except there was one very small error in what Shubhayan said. Can anybody of you guess what that error was? You can raise your hands if you want to take a guess. Okay, you don't need to be afraid of guessing. Okay, there are no wrong answers. Everybody is here to learn. He said string. Abhirup, can you elaborate on what you mean? See, I want you all to have a very complete understanding of everything. Okay, I don't want you to have incomplete blanks within your understanding. Okay, you need to have a very complete understanding. Abhirup, can you just elaborate a little bit on what you mean by he said string? See, what Shubhayan said was completely correct. There's just one tiny thing he needs to do before. Shaurya Kumar Singh. No, this has the same error that Shubhayan had in his answer. Can anybody guess what the error is? Just take a guess. You don't need to be afraid. You check integer, don't be. Abhirup, can you just unmute and elaborate if you can?
Like you said that we will check the integer. We should like check the integer by reversing it, then and then it will say. But he said that it will check the string.
Yeah, I think Abhirup has understood quite well what the error is. See, at the beginning only, I told you guys, strings are ordered data types and integers are not. Integers are unordered data types, they just check the value. So, all of this, okay, this slicing bit, which Shaurya and Shubhayan said, all of this applies to ordered data types. So, you can only do this to strings and lists. So, before you do like x colon colon -1, like Shaurya and Shubhayan said, you need to convert this to a string. Okay, so you need to take a string value. So if you have n equal to int input, you can't just do, let's say, m equal to n colon colon -1. Leave the rest of the program. If I just run this, it will give me an error. Oh, achana, I need to enter something. Now it will give me an error. Why? Because you can't just do this, the indexing and slicing bit, on an integer. However, you can do str of n and then colon colon -1, and then if you run it, obviously it will not give me any output because I'm not printing anything, but it will run without any errors. Acha, one more thing, if you're still confused about this, why didn't I do the third bracket thing inside of the str ka bracket? It's because first we'll convert this to a string, right? And then we'll do the slicing. A lot of people have problems with all of this. Anyways, now just like Shaurya said, we just take all of this and paste it over here. This is almost flawless, except that if I pass in something, it will give me that error. Now I can do str of x, and then I run it. I do 1 2 3 2 1. Why does it say no? Why? Oh, acha. One more thing. Just not this. Uh, y is checking with x, right? And another thing you need to be careful about in Python is, just like I said before, you need to be careful of the types, okay, of all the variables you're using. So x right now is an integer. When we're doing str of x, it returns a string, right? And it slices that string and it stores that value inside of y. But that doesn't change the data type of x. X is still an integer. And if you do y double equals x, what that does is it checks if y is the same as x. And although y is 1 2 3 2 1 and x is 1 2 3 2 1, y is a string while x is not. So that's why it goes into the else. Okay. Now feed it str x over here. Now I did 1 2 3 2 1. This would print yes. Also, some of you might be wondering, then why are we using int input? Yeah, you don't need to. You can just do input, right? And you can just skip all of these str steps. But my point was that you can use, like, you can convert stuff to strings, and then you can check stuff like if it reads the same from the front as well as the back. Okay, if you had say 5 different integers on the input, you couldn't just take all of them as string, or you could, but there are situations where you would need to convert integers into strings, okay, and you would need to do stuff. Okay, now I guess that's all I need to cover for today. Now before we end the meeting, firstly there's a couple of things I would like you all to do. You need to go to codingladders.com. I'll be sending the links in the group, and then you need to make an account. Acha, before you make an account in Coding Ladders, you need to have an account in Codeforces first. And once you have, you can register an account in Coding Ladders, okay? And you need to pass in your Codeforces username as the Codeforces handle, okay? You'll see that in the registration step. Then you need to go to Codeforces, and then you'll have ladder A, and you can go into ladder A, and or you can just, acha, I need to log in again. Anyways, I won't be logging in again. Okay, now how the ladder works is you have 100 of these problems, okay, in ladder A. There's also ladder B and ladder C, but you don't need to worry about it, or you can if you want to. But I would just recommend ladder A as the bare minimum of what you need to do now. Go into ladder A. There are 100 problems. Now all of these problems will be locked unless you have solved any one of them externally before. Now you need to solve all of these problems one by one. Okay. So let's say watermelon. Hopefully Codeforces will work. I guess it is. Okay. Go into this watermelon problem, which is the first problem. You also need to be logged in into Codeforces. Read the problem. Okay. Now I'll give you a very helpful advice if you're pursuing CP. Uh, you don't need to read all of this. Okay. Just read what's necessary. So let's say this problem, right? You just, like, you scan the entire thing and all of this. Okay, one hot summer day, Pete and his friend Billy decided to buy a watermelon. All of this is just a made up story, right? All of this is not needed. Just look at all of this. Okay, W kilos. This stuff is important for the problem. So watermelon was weighed, it weighed W kilos. Then again, dying of thirst, decided to divide the berry, however, the face. All of this is not important. You just scan over the entire thing, and then you get to something which is actually important to the problem. In such a way, they want to divide the watermelon in such a way that each of the two parts weigh an even number of kilos. At the same time, it is not obligatory that the parts are equal. This is what is important for the problem. You just need to read this. Okay. Then you go to the input part. The first and the only input line contains the integer w. It also gives you a range for w. So it's less than equal to, it's greater than equal to 1 or 100. Less than equal to 100. So w can be as less as just 1, and it can be as much as just 100. Not more, not less. You get the weight of the watermelon, and you also have a sample input and output. Now you need to print yes if the boys can divide the watermelon into two parts, each of them weighing an even number of kilos. Even even over here, okay, you don't need to read any of this actually. You can just read the output bit, okay, and you can figure out what the problem is about. So you can save a lot of time, okay. A lot of problems will have very long stories attached to them, and you don't need to read all of that. So you need to print yes if you can divide it into two parts, each of them weighing an even number of kilos, and no if you can't divide it like that. And you have one sample input, which is 8, and sample output for that case, which is yes. So 8 you can divide it as 4 plus 4 or 2 plus 6, right? So you can divide it into two portions, each weighing an even number of kilos. So the output is yes. So this is a very simple problem. I hopefully every one of you will get it very easily within 1 or 2 minutes. So what I need you to do is go to Codeforces, make an account, go to Coding Ladders, make an account, go to this ladder. I need you to solve till 10. Okay, this perfect permutation bit. I need you to solve till this. If you want, you can solve even beyond this if you feel the problems are very easy for you. But as a bare minimum, you need to solve till perfect permutation. Okay. I believe this is a good milestone sort of thing. For those of you beginning with CP, you don't need a lot of knowledge. And if you get stuck in any of this, you can just DM me. Do not DM me about meeting timings and meeting links. Okay, DM me about all of this if you're facing problems with all of this. And yeah, you need to solve till the 10th one. If you want, you can solve even further, but the questions they get harder as you go down. Okay, the 100th one being the hardest one, and ladder B and C, they are successively even harder than ladder A, and so on. Okay, that's it. Another thing, don't use Notepad to code. Download VS Code or any other code editor if you haven't already. Sublime Text, or I don't know, Atom maybe. Okay. Do you have any other questions as of now? I don't think you should. Today's session was very simple. The website is super slow. Which website was it? Code Forces and Coding Ladders. Uh, uh, they face server issues. Anyways, uh, why can I not type anything in VS Code output section? Acha, Shaurya, you can just DM me screenshots, okay? And I'll look at what problems you're facing specifically. Is that fine? Nandi, don't go into all that terminology. Okay, he won't understand probably if he's using VS Code for the first time. Shaurya, just send me screenshots in the WhatsApp, okay, and I'll look at your problem. Acha, since you're facing problems with VS Code, acha, I can't really show you because most of you will be using Windows, and I don't really have Windows right now. Just DM me, okay, Shaurya. Anybody else have any questions for today related to today's session or anything that was taught in the last session? I'll take that as a no, right? Okay, I'll be ending the meeting now. Okay, goodbye, everyone.